I watched her mock my skin at the charity gala, laughing with her friends about my unprofessional appearance. She didn't know I wasn't just another guest. I was the reason her billionaire fiancé could afford that diamond on her finger. And tonight, he was about to find out what she really thought of people like me. But before I tell you how everything unfolded, if you believe in justice and karma, stay until the very end. You won't believe how this story turns out. Hit that like button right now if you're ready for a story about dignity, vindication, and the moment prejudice finally met its match. My name is Diana Okonkwo, and 5 years ago, I walked into Caldwell Pharmaceuticals with nothing but a distribution strategy everyone said was impossible and the determination to prove them wrong. I didn't come from money. I didn't have connections. What I had was an MBA from Wharton that I paid for with student loans I'm still paying off, and a vision for how to revolutionize pharmaceutical distribution across the Pacific region. Lawrence Caldwell, the CEO, took a chance on me when no one else would. I made him $3 billion in revenue. In return, he made me Chief Operations Officer and gave me something even more valuable, equity in the company, 25% ownership, earned through pure performance. But here's the thing about being a Black woman in corporate America, especially in the pharmaceutical industry. You can have all the credentials in the world, you can generate billions in revenue, you can sit in the C-suite, but there will always be someone who looks at your natural hair, your dark skin, and decides you don't belong. That someone, on this particular night, was Christine Beaumont. The Metropolitan Charity Gala for Children's Medical Research was the kind of event where Manhattan's elite gathered to write checks and feel good about themselves. I wasn't there to socialize. I was there representing Caldwell Pharmaceuticals because Lawrence was being honored for his $50 million donation to pediatric research. I wore an emerald gown that cost more than most people's monthly rent, and my hair was styled in an elegant crown braid that had taken 2 hours to perfect. I felt beautiful. I felt powerful. I felt like I belonged. That feeling lasted exactly 12 minutes. I was standing near the champagne fountain, reviewing some notes on my phone about potential investors Lawrence wanted me to meet, when I first felt the stares. You know that feeling when you can sense eyes on you, judgment radiating across a room? I looked up and saw her. Christine Beaumont. I'd seen her in photos on Lawrence's desk, heard him talk about their upcoming wedding, but we'd never met in person. She was holding court with a group of socialites, all perfectly coiffed hair and designer gowns, and she was staring directly at me with an expression I'd seen too many times in my life, dismissal mixed with disgust. I tried to ignore it and moved toward the networking area, hoping to find some of the investors Lawrence had mentioned. But Christine's voice carried across the marble floor, loud enough to ensure I'd hear every word. "I just don't understand why companies let certain employees represent them at these events without proper grooming standards," she said, her tone dripping with false concern. One of her friends asked what she meant, and Christine continued, "That woman over there, the hair situation. It's so unkempt, so unprofessional for a corporate event. I mean, really, there are standards." I froze. My heart was pounding, but I kept my face neutral. I've learned over the years that showing emotion only gives people like her more ammunition. I turned to walk away with whatever dignity I could maintain, but in my haste I accidentally bumped her champagne glass. A few drops spilled onto her hand. "Of course," Christine said, her voice turning venomous. "Can't even walk properly. Tell me, does your company not have HR policies about presentation, or do they just let anyone show up looking like that?" I took a breath and forced myself to remain calm. "I'm sorry about your drink, excuse me." But she grabbed my arm, her perfectly manicured nails digging into my skin. "Wait, I'm genuinely curious. Do you think that hair is appropriate for a black tie event? Or is this some kind of statement? Because if you're trying to make a point, there's a time and place, and this isn't it." Her friends looked uncomfortable, but no one spoke up. One of them whispered something I couldn't quite hear, something about Lawrence's company. Christine waved her off dismissively. "Lawrence employs hundreds of people. He doesn't know every mid-level nobody who shows up to these things." I locked eyes with her, and for the first time that evening, I let her see my anger. "You should ask him about that," I said quietly. Before Christine could respond, I heard a familiar voice behind me. "Diana, I've been looking everywhere for you. We have investors who want to discuss the Pacific merger." Lawrence Caldwell appeared at my side, his hand naturally resting on my shoulder, the way it always did when we were in work mode together. Warm, professional, trusting. He was 52, silver-haired, wearing a tuxedo that probably cost more than a used car, and completely oblivious to the tension crackling in the air. I watched Christine's face drain of color. Her grip on my arm loosened, and she took a step back, her expression transforming from contempt to confusion to something that might have been fear. "Christine," Lawrence said, noticing her for the first time. "I don't think you've met Diana Okonkwo yet. Diana, this is my fiancée, Christine Beaumont." Christine extended her hand, forcing a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "How lovely to meet you. What department do you work in?" "Operations," I said simply, shaking her hand with just enough pressure to be professional. Lawrence beamed with pride, completely missing the undercurrent. "Diana's being modest. She's our chief operations officer and the architect behind every successful initiative we've launched in the past 5 years. The Pacific merger everyone's talking about? That's all Diana." I watched Christine's face carefully. She was trying to recover, trying to recalculate, but the damage was already done. She knew it. I knew it. The question was whether Lawrence would find out. We made small talk for another excruciating minute before investors approached, wanting to discuss expansion strategies. Lawrence asked me to join the conversation, and I did what I always do. I commanded the room. I spoke about market penetration, distribution networks, regulatory challenges, and revenue projections. The investors hung on every word. One of them mentioned the Wall Street Journal feature about my innovative approach to pharmaceutical logistics. Another asked if I was speaking at the upcoming industry conference in Geneva. The whole time, I could feel Christine watching, seething, realizing that I wasn't just some employee who'd wandered into the gala. I was essential. I was respected. I was, in many ways, her equal. After the investors left, Christine pulled Lawrence aside. I couldn't hear everything they said, but I caught fragments. Her asking why he'd never mentioned working closely with her. Him looking confused, saying I practically ran the company. Her saying something about me being different from his usual executives. Him asking what she meant by different, and then I heard it clearly. Christine saying, I expected someone more polished." Lawrence's expression changed. I'd worked with him long enough to recognize when his patience was wearing thin. "Polished?" he said, his voice dropping to that dangerous, quiet tone he used in hostile board meetings. "Diana has an MBA from Wharton and built our entire Pacific operation from nothing. What exactly are you trying to say, Christine?" She backtracked, but pride wouldn't let her stop completely. "Nothing, I just meant the hair and everything. Lawrence, be reasonable. For high-level events, there's a certain standard. You know what I mean?" His voice went cold. "No, Christine. I don't know what you mean. Explain it to me. Explain what standard you're referring to." The conversation ended there, but I could see Lawrence's mind working. He excused himself from Christine and found me on the terrace where I'd gone to catch my breath and collect myself. "Diana," he said quietly, "I need you to be honest with me. What happened before I arrived earlier?" I hesitated. I've spent my entire career trying not to be the angry black woman, not to make waves, not to cause problems. "It's not important," I said. "Let's focus on the gala." "Diana," his voice was firm now, "you've worked beside me for 5 years. I know when something's wrong. I know when you're upset. What did Christine say to you?" So I told him. Everything. The comments about my hair, the implication that I was unprofessional, the way she grabbed my arm and questioned whether I belonged there, the suggestion that I was making some kind of inappropriate statement with my natural appearance. I watched Lawrence's face transform. Shock, then rage, then something harder, determination. "Diana, I am so sorry," he said, and I could hear genuine pain in his voice. This is completely unacceptable. Lawrence, please, I said quickly. I don't want to cause problems in your relationship. I can handle this. I've dealt with worse. He shook his head. You shouldn't have to handle it, and you didn't cause anything, but I'm going to fix this. Before I could stop him, he walked back inside. I followed, my heart pounding, not sure what he was about to do. He walked straight to the podium, where the evening's program was just beginning, and took the microphone from the surprised master of ceremonies. Ladies and gentlemen, Lawrence said, his voice carrying across the ballroom. May I have your attention, please? I saw Christine at their table, looking proud, probably thinking he was about to make some romantic gesture. Her friends were smiling at her, no doubt imagining some grand public declaration of love. Tonight is about children's medicine and the brilliant minds advancing this field, Lawrence continued. But it's also about recognizing true character and excellence. I built Caldwell Pharmaceuticals with one principle above all others: merit over appearance, substance over superficiality. In this industry, what matters is whether you can save lives, whether you can innovate, whether you can lead. The room had gone completely silent. I stood frozen near the entrance, wondering where he was going with this. 5 years ago, Lawrence said, Diana Okonkwo walked into my office with a distribution strategy that everyone, and I mean everyone, said was impossible. Every consultant I hired told me it couldn't work. Every industry expert said I'd be throwing money away. Diana proved them all wrong. She made it reality, and in the process, she generated $3 billion in revenue for Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. A spotlight found me in the crowd. I wanted to disappear, but I forced myself to stand tall, to own this moment even though I hadn't asked for it. She wears her natural hair with pride, Lawrence continued, and it's beautiful. She represents everything this company stands for: authenticity, excellence, and dignity. She's brilliant, she's driven, and she's exactly the kind of person who should be at events like this, representing the best of what our industry can achieve. I could see Christine's friends glancing at her uncomfortably. Some people in the audience were starting to piece together that something had happened, that this speech was pointed. Then Lawrence said something that made my blood run cold. What some people don't know, he said slowly, is that tonight's $50 million donation? It's not from me alone. The audience gasped. I felt my knees go weak. Diana Okonkwo owns 25% of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals. She earned that equity through performance bonuses and profit sharing over 5 years of exceptional work. Half of tonight's donation, $25 million, is hers. She is not my employee in any traditional sense. She is my partner. She is a co-owner of one of the most successful pharmaceutical companies in the country. The room erupted in applause. People were standing, turning to look at me, their expressions filled with respect and admiration. But I couldn't take my eyes off Christine's table. Her face had gone pale, then red, then pale again. The realization was hitting her in waves. I wasn't just some mid-level employee. I was, in practical terms, her financial equal. The woman she'd mocked, whose appearance she'd called unprofessional, had just been revealed as one of the wealthiest people in the room. Anyone who questions Diana's presentation, her professionalism, or her place at this table, Lawrence said, his voice hardening, fundamentally misunderstands what excellence looks like. Thank you. He handed the microphone back and walked off the stage. But instead of returning to Christine, he walked to where I stood, took my hand, and led me to the investors' table. The message was clear. I didn't see what happened next at Christine's table, but I heard about it later from multiple sources. Lawrence returned after speaking with investors, reached into his pocket, and placed the engagement ring on the table beside Christine. I can't marry someone who sees people the way you do, he said quietly. We're done. Christine, desperate now, tried to apologize, tried to explain it away as a misunderstanding. But Lawrence was immovable. No, he said, you revealed who you are tonight, and I believe you. Within hours, the speech had gone viral. Multiple guests had recorded it and posted it on social media. The story spread like wildfire. Billionaire CEO defends black executive, ends engagement over fiancé's racist comments. Christine's carefully curated Instagram, where she had 2 million followers and lucrative sponsorship deals, became a battleground. People dug through her old posts and found a pattern of subtle discrimination, microaggressions disguised as fashion advice, coded language about professionalism, and appropriate presentation. Her sponsorships evaporated overnight. Fashion brands that had paid her thousands per post released statements distancing themselves from her views. Her follower count plummeted as people realized that her polished exterior hid something ugly underneath. I wish I could say I felt purely vindicated, but the truth is more complicated. I felt relieved, yes. Validated, absolutely. But I also felt exhausted. Because here's what people don't understand about moments like this. I shouldn't have needed a billionaire to defend me. My credentials should have been enough. My work should have spoken for itself. The fact that it took Lawrence's public intervention for people to see my worth, for Christine to face consequences, says something deeply troubling about the world we live in. The board of Caldwell Pharmaceuticals offered me a CEO position for a new division focused on emerging markets. Lawrence decided to step back from public life for a while, focusing on research and development rather than the social circuit. I accepted the position and immediately used my platform to create mentorship programs for underrepresented students in pharmaceutical sciences. I established scholarships. I spoke openly about the discrimination that still exists in corporate America, even for those of us who've made it. 6 months later, I was at a coffee shop near my apartment when I saw Christine. She looked different, smaller somehow, without the designer clothes and professional styling. She was alone, sitting in a corner with a laptop, and when our eyes met, I saw something I hadn't expected, genuine remorse. She approached my table carefully, as if afraid I might tell her to leave. "Diana," she said quietly, "I know I have no right to speak to you, but I need to say something. I lost everything because I couldn't see past my own prejudices and privilege. You didn't deserve what I said to you. You didn't deserve any of it." I looked at her for a long moment. Part of me wanted to tell her exactly what I thought, to let out all the anger I'd been holding back, but I'd learned something over the past 6 months. Holding on to anger only hurts yourself. "No," I said simply. "I didn't deserve it. But I hope you learned something." "I did," she said, tears in her eyes. "Too late, but I did. I'm in therapy now. I'm working on understanding where all of that came from. I'm trying to be better." "It's never too late to change," I said, standing to leave. "But it's not my job to forgive you. That's between you and yourself." As I walked away, I realized something important. That night at the gala taught me that your dignity doesn't need anyone's defense, but when someone with power uses it to stand for what's right, it can change everything. Christine lost her relationship, her reputation, her income, and her comfort. But maybe, just maybe, she gained something more valuable: perspective. The understanding that the way you treat people when you think they have less power than you reveals who you really are. As for Lawrence and me, we're still just colleagues and business partners, but I'll always respect a man who chose principle over comfort, who was willing to blow up his own engagement rather than let prejudice slide. That's rare. That's real integrity. If this story moved you, hit that like button and subscribe for more stories about karma, justice, and standing up for what's right. Share this with someone who needs to remember that excellence comes in every shade, style, and form. Leave a comment below telling me what you would have done in this situation. Would you have spoken up? Would you have stayed silent? And remember this: your natural self is your most powerful self. Your hair, your skin, your voice, your presence, they are not things to be apologized for or hidden away. They are not unprofessional or inappropriate. They are you, in all your authentic glory. Never let anyone convince you that you need to shrink yourself to fit into their narrow definition of acceptable. Because here's the truth that Christine learned the hard way: karma doesn't forget. And the person you mock today might be the person who holds your future in their hands tomorrow. Treat everyone with dignity and respect, not because of what they can do for you, but because it's the right thing to do. That's not just good morals. That's good business. That's good life. Thank you for watching. Until next time, stand tall and remember your worth.